Before we dive into this unbelievable true story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you never miss stories like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's begin. Detective Ryan Matthews stood at the entrance of Buckingham Palace, watching the morning ceremony with barely concealed irritation. At 38 years old, Ryan was a decorated SWAT officer from New York City with 15 years of law enforcement experience. He had faced down armed criminals, negotiated hostage situations, and earned commendations for bravery. His record was spotless, his reputation solid. He was someone people looked up to, someone who represented law and order. But right now, none of that mattered. Ryan was on what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation with his wife, Jennifer, and their 2 children. After months of intense cases and dangerous operations, he had promised his family a proper holiday. London was Jennifer's choice. She loved British history and had always dreamed of seeing the changing of the guards ceremony. The trip had started poorly. Their flight was delayed by 6 hours. The hotel lost their reservation, forcing them to scramble for alternative accommodation. Their luggage arrived damaged. Then yesterday, Ryan's wallet was stolen on the underground, containing his credit cards and several £100s in cash. He had spent hours at the police station filing reports. The time he had promised to spend with his family, this morning was supposed to turn things around. Jennifer was excited about seeing the palace guards. Their kids, Emma and Lucas, were finally enjoying themselves after days of complaining. Ryan forced a smile and tried to relax. But the stress of the past few days had wound him tight as a spring. The ceremony began, and tourists pressed forward with cameras and phones. Ryan kept his family close, his protective instincts never fully switching off, even on vacation. Years of police work had made him constantly aware of his surroundings, always scanning for threats or problems. That was when he noticed the young man causing trouble. A college student, probably early 20s, was deliberately trying to provoke one of the royal guards. The kid was making faces, waving his arms, getting too close. The guard, whose nameplate read Thompson, remained perfectly still, eyes forward. Maintaining the discipline expected of his position, Ryan felt his jaw tighten. He recognized the type: spoiled, disrespectful, thinking rules did not apply to them. Back home, Ryan dealt with people like this constantly. Young men who thought authority was a joke until they faced real consequences. The kid reminded him of a suspect from a recent case who had nearly gotten someone killed because he refused to take things seriously. The crowd around them was laughing, encouraging the student. People were recording videos, treating the harassment as entertainment. Ryan looked for security officers, but saw none nearby. The guard continued standing at attention, professional despite the provocation. Ryan grudgingly respected that discipline, though part of him wanted to see the guard break protocol and teach the kid a lesson. Jennifer tugged at Ryan's arm, suggesting they move to a different viewing area. She could sense her husband's rising tension. 15 years of marriage had taught her to read his moods, and she recognized the signs of his temper building. But Ryan shook his head. Someone needed to say something to this disrespectful kid. Someone needed to enforce basic decency. The situation escalated quickly. The college student pulled out a marker and reached toward the guard's uniform, apparently thinking it would be funny to draw on it. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Security was still nowhere to be seen. Thompson maintained his position, but Ryan could see the slight tension in the guard's jaw. The only sign of his frustration. Something inside Ryan snapped. All the stress of the past few days, all the frustration with entitled people who had no respect for those serving the public, it all converged in that moment. He pushed through the crowd, his police training making him move with authority and purpose. People instinctively stepped aside. Ryan grabbed the student's arm, pulling him away from the guard. His grip was firm, professional, the same hold he had used countless times when detaining suspects. The student yelped in surprise, dropping his marker. Ryan identified himself as a law enforcement officer, though technically he had no jurisdiction here. That did not matter to him in the moment. Right was right, regardless of geography. The student tried to pull away, getting aggressive. He shoved at Ryan, calling him names, demanding to be let go. The crowd's mood shifted from entertainment to concern. Phones that had been recording the harassment now turned toward this new confrontation. Jennifer called out for Ryan to stop, to let it go, to let local security handle it. But Ryan was not thinking clearly anymore. This kid represented everything he despised about modern society. No respect for authority, no consequences for actions, everyone with a camera thinking they could do whatever they wanted. He yanked the student harder than necessary, forcing him toward where he had seen security officers earlier. That was when Guard Thompson spoke. It was against protocol, against every rule of his position. But he spoke anyway, his voice calm and measured. He thanked Ryan for his concern, but explained that security was already on the way and the situation was under control. He asked Ryan with perfect politeness to please release the young man and step back. Ryan turned to look at the guard, surprised to hear him speak. For a moment, their eyes met. Thompson's expression was neutral, but firm. He was not asking as a request. He was telling Ryan to back off, to let proper channels handle this. In Thompson's voice, Ryan heard the quiet authority of someone who did not need to shout or use force to command respect. Something about being told what to do by this young guard, someone Ryan assumed had far less real-world experience than himself, triggered something ugly inside him. Here he was, a decorated SWAT officer with 15 years protecting people, being lectured by someone standing around in a ceremonial uniform. The unfairness of everything that had gone wrong on this trip, the disrespect from the college kid, and now this guard presuming to give him orders. It all collided in Ryan's mind. Ryan released the college student but did not step back. Instead, he moved toward Thompson, his body language aggressive. He started talking, his voice getting louder with each word. He told Thompson that he was a real officer, someone who faced actual danger, not just a toy soldier standing around for tourists. He said he was trying to help, trying to maintain order, and this was the thanks he got. The crowd around them grew silent. People could feel the tension rising. Jennifer pushed through, trying to reach her husband, but there were too many people between them. She called his name, pleading for him to stop, to walk away, to remember where he was and what he was doing. Thompson remained at attention, his face showing nothing. He did not respond to Ryan's words, did not react to the insults. His training held firm. He was a statue, immovable and silent. That silence, that refusal to engage, only made Ryan angrier. He felt dismissed, disrespected, as if this guard thought he was beneath notice. Security officers were approaching now, pushing through the crowd. They had been dealing with the college student situation from another angle and were now aware of this new problem. But they were not close enough, not fast enough to prevent what happened next. Ryan, in a moment of absolute stupidity that he would replay in his mind 1,000 times afterward, reached out and shoved Guard Thompson's shoulder. It was not a gentle push. It was a hard, aggressive shove meant to get a reaction, to break that infuriating calm. The impact rocked Thompson back slightly, but incredibly, he maintained his position. His feet shifted to absorb the force, but he did not raise his hands, did not retaliate, did not break his stance. The crowd gasped. Dozens of phones captured the moment from every angle. The college student, still standing nearby after being released, stared in shock. Even he had not actually touched the guard. This American cop had just assaulted a royal guard in front of hundreds of witnesses. Then Ryan made it worse. Still blinded by anger and frustration, still feeling disrespected and unappreciated, he shoved Thompson again. This time harder. Thompson stumbled back a full step, his ceremonial weapon shifting position. For just a moment, there was a flash of something in the guard's eyes. Not fear, not anger, but deep disappointment. The look of someone who had expected better from a fellow service member. That was when everything changed. 3 security officers reached Ryan simultaneously. Their response was swift, professional, and overwhelming. Within seconds, Ryan was face down on the ground, arms being pulled behind his back. He tried to resist out of instinct, his police training kicking in, but these officers knew exactly what they were doing. They had him restrained before he could process what was happening. Jennifer finally reached them, Emma and Lucas crying behind her. She was shouting, trying to explain that her husband was a police officer, that there had been a misunderstanding, that he was just trying to help. but her words fell on deaf ears. The security officers had seen what everyone had seen. An aggressive tourist had assaulted a guard on duty. Nothing else mattered. Ryan's face pressed against the cold pavement. He finally began to understand what he had done. The anger drained away, replaced by cold horror. He was a cop. He knew the law. He knew about assault. He knew about jurisdiction and authority. And he had just thrown all of that away in a moment of blind rage. In a foreign country? On camera? In front of his family, he was lifted to his feet, hands secured behind his back. The crowd had grown massive now, everyone recording, everyone watching. Ryan caught sight of Thompson, who had returned to his position. The guard was back at attention, perfect and still, as if nothing had happened. But there was a redness on his shoulder where Ryan had shoved him, visible even through the thick uniform fabric. As Ryan was led away, he looked back at his family. Jennifer held their children, both of them, crying and confused. Emma, his 10-year-old daughter, looked terrified. Lucas, just 8, was asking why those men were hurting Daddy. The look on Jennifer's face was something Ryan had never seen before. Not just disappointment or anger, but a kind of devastated disbelief. This was not the man she had married. This was not the father their children knew. The security office was cold and sterile. Ryan was placed in a holding room, still handcuffed. British police officers arrived within minutes. They were professional, but cold as they explained his situation. He had assaulted a member of Her Majesty's military forces while they were performing their duty. This was not a simple assault charge. This was a serious criminal offense, with potential military implications. Ryan tried to explain himself. He was a police officer. He had been trying to help. The college kid was harassing the guard. He just lost his temper. He did not mean any real harm. But even as he spoke, he heard how pathetic it all sounded. Every excuse was hollow. Every justification was empty. One of the British officers, sergeant named Davies, looked at him with barely concealed disgust. Davies said he had seen the videos. Multiple angles, all showing the same thing. An aggressive American attacking a guard who was doing nothing but standing at his post. Davies mentioned that Guard Thompson had years of service, including deployment in conflict zones. He was a trained soldier, showing remarkable restraint, and Ryan had assaulted him for no reason other than wounded pride. The handcuffs were removed. But Ryan was told he was under arrest. His rights were read to him in British legal terminology. He would be processed, charged, and held pending a court appearance. His passport would be confiscated. His family would be contacted. And given his profession, American authorities would be notified as well. That last part hit Ryan like a physical blow. American authorities would be notified. That meant his department would know. His captain, his team, everyone he worked with would hear about this. His career, everything he had built over 15 years, was about to crumble because of 30 seconds of stupidity. The processing took hours. Fingerprints, photographs, detailed statements. Each step was humiliating. Ryan had been on the other side of this process countless times, booking suspects, filling out paperwork. Now he was the suspect. The criminal. The person who had lost control and hurt someone. Jennifer was allowed to see him briefly. She came alone, having left the kids with hotel staff. The conversation was painful and short. She did not yell or cry. She just looked at him with hollow eyes and asked why. Why had he done this? Why had he thrown away everything? Why had he embarrassed their family and traumatized their children? Ryan had no good answers. She told him she was taking the kids and flying home as soon as possible. She could not stay here, could not watch this unfold. She needed to protect Emma and Lucas from more trauma. Ryan nodded, understanding, but feeling his heart break. Jennifer said she did not know what would happen with their marriage. She needed time to think, to process what kind of man she was actually married to. Then she left, and Ryan was alone with his thoughts. The videos hit social media within hours. By evening, they had gone viral. The headlines were brutal. American cop assaults Royal Guard. SWAT officer attacks ceremonial guard for no reason. Shocking violence at Buckingham Palace. News outlets picked up the story. It was international news by midnight. Ryan's department in New York, was contacted by the media before they were contacted by British authorities. His captain, Michael Torres, was blindsided by reporters asking for comments on his officers' behavior in London. Torres watched the videos in disbelief. He had known Ryan for 10 years, had worked alongside him on dozens of operations. This seemed impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. Torres immediately suspended Ryan, pending investigation. The department issued a statement condemning the behavior and promising full cooperation with British authorities. They also announced an internal investigation into Ryan's conduct and fitness for duty. Torres called Jennifer to check on her and the kids, offering support. She thanked him but said she just wanted to go home. Back in London, Ryan spent his first night in a cell. Not a holding room, but an actual jail cell. The reality of his situation became impossible to ignore. He was not going home anytime soon. He was facing serious charges. His career was over. His marriage was probably over. And all of it was his own fault. The next morning, Ryan met with a lawyer provided by his police union. Daniel O'Brien was experienced with international incidents involving American law enforcement. He reviewed the case file and the videos, his expression growing more grim with each passing minute. Finally, he looked at Ryan and delivered the hard truth. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple video angles, dozens of witnesses, clear footage of Ryan shoving guard Thompson twice without provocation. There was no self-defense claim. There was no justification. Ryan had simply attacked someone who was doing their job. O'Brien said the only option was to plead guilty and hope for leniency based on Ryan's previously clean record and the stress he had been under. Ryan asked about his career. O'Brien was blunt. It was finished. Even if Ryan somehow avoided jail time, no police department would employ him after this. Assaulting someone, especially a military service member, while on camera was an automatic disqualifier. The best Ryan could hope for was to minimize the legal consequences and try to rebuild some kind of life afterward. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 days later. Ryan was released on bail with strict conditions. He had to surrender his passport, report daily to authorities, and stay within London. He was also prohibited from going anywhere near Buckingham Palace or attempting to contact guard Thompson. Violating any condition meant immediate arrest and detention until trial. Ryan checked into a cheap hotel, his finances already strained from legal fees and bail. The room was tiny and depressing, a far cry from the family suite they had booked for their vacation. He sat on the bed and finally allowed himself to fully break down. He cried for the first time since he was a teenager. Great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. His phone buzzed constantly. Messages from colleagues expressing shock and disappointment. Former partners asking if the videos were real. A few supportive messages from close friends, but even those felt strained. Social media was vicious. People who had never met him were calling him every name imaginable. Some comments were even calling for him to be imprisoned for years. One message stood out. It was from Marcus Reeves, an older officer who had retired 2 years earlier. Marcus had been Ryan's mentor when he first joined the force. The message was brief, but cut deep. "You were supposed to be better than this. Call me when you figure out what happened to you." Ryan did call, late that night. Marcus answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting. They talked for over an hour. Marcus did not lecture or condemn. Instead, he asked questions. What had Ryan been feeling in that moment? When had he started seeing the job as him versus everyone else? When had stress become an excuse instead of something to manage properly? Through that conversation, Ryan began to see patterns he had ignored. The increasing irritability over the past year, the short temper with Jennifer and the kids, the way he had started viewing civilians with contempt rather than as people he was sworn to protect. The job had changed him slowly, and he had not noticed until it was too late. Marcus explained something called warrior mindset syndrome. It happened to cops who spent too long in high-stress tactical positions. They started seeing everything as a threat or a challenge. They lost the ability to turn off the aggression. They forgot how to be civilians. Marcus admitted he had struggled with it himself before retiring. That was part of why he left when he did. Ryan realized Marcus was right. He had been so focused on being the tough SWAT officer that he had forgotten how to be a regular person. Every situation became something to dominate or control. Every challenge to his authority became a personal insult. He had lost perspective, lost balance, and now he was paying the price. The days leading up to the hearing were torture. Ryan had nothing to do but think about what he had done and watch his life fall apart from across the ocean. News from home was consistently bad. His department's internal investigation was moving forward. Local news stations were covering the story. His neighbors were being interviewed, most expressing shock that quiet Ryan Matthews could do something like this. Emma's school called Jennifer to say that other kids were teasing their daughter about her dad being a criminal. Lucas was having nightmares, waking up crying about bad men taking his father away. Jennifer sent Ryan a text message with these updates. No other commentary, just the facts. The message was clear. See what you have done to your children? Ryan also learned that guard Thompson had suffered a shoulder injury from the assault. Nothing permanent, but enough to require medical attention and temporary light duty. That knowledge ate at Ryan. He had hurt someone who was simply doing their job. Someone who had shown remarkable restraint and professionalism. Someone who was, in many ways, a better representation of service than Ryan had been. Ryan requested permission to write a letter of apology to Thompson. His lawyer advised against it, saying anything Ryan wrote could be used against him in court. But Ryan did not care anymore about legal strategy. He needed to apologize, even if Thompson never read it or accepted it. He wrote the letter longhand, his words clumsy and inadequate but sincere. He apologized for his actions without making excuses. He acknowledged that Thompson had been doing his job properly and that Ryan had been completely in the wrong. He explained that he was not looking for forgiveness, as he did not deserve it, but wanted Thompson to know that what happened was not his fault in any way. Ryan took full responsibility and expressed deep shame for his behavior. The letter was submitted through proper channels. Whether Thompson received it or read it, Ryan never knew. But writing it helped Ryan face what he had done. He could not hide behind stress or bad luck or misunderstandings. He had assaulted someone, period. That was the truth, and he had to own it. The preliminary hearing arrived. Ryan dressed in his only suit, the same one he wore to formal police events. It felt wrong now, like wearing a costume from a role he no longer played. O'Brien met him outside the courthouse, reviewing the plan one more time. Plead guilty, express remorse, hope the judge showed mercy. Media presence was heavy. Cameras and reporters crowded the entrance. Ryan kept his head down, refusing to make statements. Inside, the courtroom was formal and intimidating. The judge, Lord Justice Harrison, was known for being fair but strict. He had particular distaste for people who abused positions of authority. The prosecution laid out the case efficiently. Video evidence was shown. Medical reports about Thompson's injury were submitted. Character witnesses spoke about Thompson's exemplary service record. A military officer testified about the importance of respecting guards on duty and the seriousness of assaulting military personnel. Then came something unexpected. Guard Thompson himself appeared to give testimony. Ryan had not known he would be there. Seeing him in person, out of uniform, made everything more real. Thompson was younger than Ryan had assumed, probably late 20s. He looked fit and capable, someone who had clearly earned his position through merit and hard work. Thompson's testimony was measured and professional. He described what happened from his perspective. He confirmed the videos were accurate. He mentioned that Ryan had seemed agitated and aggressive, not rational or controlled. When asked about his injury, Thompson downplayed it, saying he had experienced worse during training. But the medical reports told a different story. Ryan's shoves had been forceful enough to cause bruising and temporary mobility issues. The prosecutor asked Thompson how the incident had affected him. Thompson paused before answering. He said the physical injury was minor and healing, but what bothered him more was the disrespect. He had chosen to serve, to stand at that post, to represent something larger than himself. Having someone attack him for doing that duty properly had been deeply demoralizing. It made him question whether the service meant anything if people felt entitled to assault those who served. Ryan listened with his head down, unable to meet Thompson's eyes. Every word was deserved. Every criticism was accurate. When Thompson finished, the judge thanked him for his service and testimony. Thompson left the witness stand, walking past Ryan without a glance. Then it was Ryan's turn. O'Brien had prepared a statement, but Ryan set it aside and spoke from his heart. He stood before the judge and admitted his guilt without reservation. He described the stress he had been under, not as an excuse but as context for how he had lost control. He talked about his career in law enforcement and how ashamed he was to have betrayed everything his. Badge represented, Ryan spoke directly about his actions. He had assaulted someone who was doing their job properly and professionally. He had set a terrible example for his children. He had disrespected the uniform he wore and the country he was visiting. He acknowledged Thompson's injury and expressed deep regret for causing harm to someone who had shown nothing but restraint and dignity. He admitted that he deserved whatever punishment the court deemed appropriate. He was not looking for sympathy or special treatment. He simply wanted to accept responsibility and, if possible, find a way to make some kind of amends. His voice cracked as he finished, and he sat down feeling emotionally drained but strangely relieved. The truth was out. No more hiding, no more excuses. Lord Justice Harrison studied Ryan for a long moment before speaking. He addressed the court about the seriousness of the offense. Assaulting military personnel on duty was not a trivial matter. The video showed clear aggression and violence. The victim's testimony revealed not just physical harm, but emotional and psychological impact as well. However, the judge continued, the court also recognized several mitigating factors. Ryan had no prior criminal record. He had a long history of public service. His guilty plea showed acceptance of responsibility. His remorse appeared genuine. The judge also noted that Ryan was facing severe consequences beyond this courtroom. Loss of career, damage to family, public humiliation. These were all results of his own actions, but they were consequences nonetheless. The sentence came down. Ryan would serve 90 days in jail. Not a suspended sentence, but actual incarceration. After release, he would be on probation for 2 years with regular reporting requirements. He would pay substantial fines and restitution to Thompson. He would also be permanently banned from returning to the United Kingdom in the future. Any violation of these terms would result in additional charges and imprisonment. Ryan accepted the sentence with a simple nod. 90 days was less than he had feared, but more than he had hoped. O'Brien seemed satisfied, whispering that they had gotten a relatively fair outcome considering the circumstances. But Ryan barely heard him. He was thinking about Jennifer and the kids, about his career, about the man he had become and the man he needed to be. He was transported to a facility outside London that housed short-term inmates. The jail was old but clean, functional rather than comfortable. Ryan was processed again, given prison clothing, assigned a cell. His cellmate was a man named Colin who was serving 6 months for fraud. Colin took one look at Ryan and immediately recognized him from the news. Word spread quickly through the jail that the American cop who hit the Royal Guard was now an inmate. Reactions were mixed. Some prisoners found it amusing that a police officer had ended up on their side of the bars. Others, particularly those with military backgrounds, were openly hostile. A few veterans made it clear that assaulting someone in uniform was unforgivable in their eyes. Ryan kept to himself as much as possible. He used his police training to read situations and avoid conflicts. He was respectful to guards and other inmates, never pulling rank or acting superior. He was just another prisoner serving his time. The humility was not an act. He genuinely felt he belonged there. The days blurred together. Wake up, meals, yard time, back to the cell. Ryan read everything he could get his hands on. Books about anger management, psychology, mindfulness. He wrote letters to Jennifer and the kids, though he was not sure if they were being read. Jennifer responded once, briefly, saying the kids were adjusting, and she was focusing on them. Her message was polite but distant. She did not say she was leaving him. She did not say she was staying either. 3 weeks into his sentence, Ryan received an unexpected visitor. Guard Thompson had requested a meeting through official channels. Ryan was shocked. Why would Thompson want to see him? O'Brien advised caution, but Ryan agreed immediately. He owed Thompson at least the courtesy of meeting if the guard wanted it. They met in a supervised visiting room, corrections officer present but giving them space. Thompson sat across from Ryan, looking uncomfortable but determined. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Thompson said he had received Ryan's letter. He had not planned to respond, but something about it had stayed with him. Thompson explained that he had been angry at first. Angry at being assaulted, angry at the disrespect, angry at having his service diminished. But as days passed, the anger faded. He started thinking about Ryan as a person rather than just an attacker. He researched Ryan's background, learned about his service record, read about his career. Thompson realized Ryan was not some random, violent tourist, but someone who had dedicated his life to protecting others. That confused Thompson. How could someone who served honorably for 15 years do something so dishonorable? He needed to understand, which was why he came. Not to forgive or condemn, but simply to understand what happened in that moment. Ryan appreciated the honesty and responded in kind. He talked about the stress he had been under, but more importantly, about how he had changed over the years without realizing it. How the job had hardened him, made him aggressive and controlling. How he had stopped seeing people as individuals and started seeing them as threats or obstacles. How his identity had become so wrapped up in being a tough cop that he forgot how to be anything else. Thompson listened carefully. When Ryan finished, he shared his own experiences. He talked about the discipline required to stand at his post, to ignore provocations, to maintain dignity even when others treated him like a prop. He explained that guards were trained to see themselves as symbols, representatives of something larger than themselves. Their personal feelings had to be set aside in service of their duty. Ryan understood then what he should have seen from the beginning. Thompson's stillness was not weakness or passivity. It was the ultimate form of strength and self-control. Standing there, absorbing disrespect without reacting, required more courage than anything Ryan had done in his SWAT career. True strength was not about dominating others. It was about controlling yourself. They talked for nearly an hour. Thompson asked about Ryan's family, and Ryan admitted his marriage was hanging by a thread. Thompson shared that he was engaged to be married next year and could not imagine putting his fiancée through what Ryan had put Jennifer through. The comment stung, but Ryan knew it was deserved. Before leaving, Thompson said something that Ryan would remember forever. He said that service, whether military or police, was supposed to make people better. It was supposed to build character, discipline, and respect. If the job was making someone worse, making them angry and violent, then something had gone wrong. Thompson hoped Ryan would use this experience to find his way back to who he was supposed to be. Ryan thanked him, his voice thick with emotion. He apologized again, knowing it could never be enough, but needing to say it anyway. Thompson nodded. Not quite acceptance, but acknowledgement. Then he left. And Ryan returned to his cell feeling strangely lighter despite the weight of his situation. The remaining weeks of his sentence passed slowly. Ryan used the time to reflect deeply on his life and choices. He realized he had been heading toward something like this for a while. Maybe not this exact situation, but some kind of breakdown or explosion. The signs had been there. Increasing anger, declining family relationships, seeing everyone as either allies or enemies. He had been burning out without recognizing the flames. Colin, his cellmate, proved to be surprisingly wise despite his own criminal record. During long evening conversations, Colin shared his own story of success turning into arrogance, turning into crime. He had been a successful financial advisor who started believing his own hype, thinking rules did not apply to him. His fraud had destroyed clients' lives and his own family. He understood Ryan's journey because he had walked a similar path. Colin suggested that people like them. People who achieved success in their fields often fell into the same trap. They started believing they were special, exempt from normal standards of behavior. Their success became their identity, and any threat to that identity felt like a threat to their existence. That was when they made catastrophic mistakes. Ryan recognized the truth in Colin's words. His identity as a tough SWAT officer had consumed everything else. When that identity was challenged, even slightly, he had lashed out violently. He had forgotten he was also a husband, a father, a human being with responsibilities beyond his badge. Rebuilding those other parts of himself would be the work of years, not days. Release day arrived on a cold morning in late autumn. Ryan walked out of the facility with just the clothes he wore and a small bag of personal items. O'Brien was waiting to drive him to the airport. His passport had been returned with the permanent ban officially noted. He was going home. But home felt like a foreign concept after everything that had happened. The flight back to New York was long and uncomfortable. Ryan sat in economy, staring out the window, thinking about what awaited him. He had no job. His police career was officially over. The department had terminated him while he was serving his sentence. No pension, no benefits, just 15 years of service, ending in disgrace. He had savings, but they were depleted from legal fees. His financial situation was precarious at best. More concerning was his family. Jennifer had agreed to let him stay in the guest room temporarily while they figured things out. She made it clear this was not reconciliation, just logistics. Emma and Lucas needed stability, and throwing their father out immediately after jail would only hurt them more. But Jennifer's tone in their phone conversations was polite and cold. The way you might speak to a stranger you were forced to interact with. Captain Torres met Ryan at the airport, a gesture Ryan had not expected. They sat in Torres's car in the parking garage, and Torres delivered some hard truths. The department was disappointed. Ryan's actions had embarrassed everyone and set back community relations. Other officers felt betrayed that one of their own had acted so recklessly. Torres personally felt let down. He had vouched for Ryan countless times, and this was the thanks he got. But Torres also said something unexpected. He told Ryan that good people sometimes did terrible things, and those people deserved a chance to make it right. Not to erase what happened, but to build something better going forward. Torres had arranged for Ryan to meet with a therapist who specialized in treating law enforcement personnel with PTSD and burnout. The first session was already scheduled. Torres was paying for it personally. Ryan tried to thank him, but Torres waved it off. He said Ryan had been a good cop for a long time before this incident. That good work should not be forgotten, even if it could not excuse what happened. Torres also mentioned that several officers had asked about Ryan, wanting to help but not knowing how. The brotherhood was damaged, but not completely broken. Returning home was awkward and painful. Jennifer was civil, but distant. Emma and Lucas were confused, happy to see their father, but clearly affected by everything. Emma asked quietly if Daddy was a bad man now. The question broke Ryan's heart. He sat down with both kids and explained in age-appropriate terms that he had made a very serious mistake and hurt someone. He told them he had been punished and was trying to become better. He assured them he still loved them and would work every day to be the father they deserved. The therapy sessions with Dr. Sarah Chen began immediately. Dr. Chen specialized in first responders and understood the unique pressures they faced. She did not excuse Ryan's behavior, but helped him understand it. They worked through his anger issues, his identity crisis, and his distorted thinking patterns. Dr. Chen explained that many officers develop what she called tactical personality, where they are always in combat mode, always ready for threats. Learning to turn that off was crucial for healing. Ryan also joined a support group for former law enforcement officers dealing with similar issues. Hearing other men and women share stories of losing control, of letting the job consume them, of hitting rock bottom, made Ryan feel less alone. These were good people who had made terrible mistakes. They were working to rebuild their lives one day at a time. Ryan found strength in their example. Finding employment proved difficult. His criminal record made most jobs impossible. Who would hire a former cop convicted of assault? Ryan applied to dozens of positions, facing rejection after rejection. Some employers recognized his name from the news, and refused to even interview him. Others seemed interested until background checks revealed his conviction. After 2 months of searching, Ryan found work at a construction company owned by a former Marine named Frank Delgado. Frank had seen the news coverage, but also researched Ryan's background. He believed in second chances, having needed one himself after struggling with PTSD following his military service. The pay was a fraction of what Ryan had earned as a SWAT officer. But it was honest work, and Frank treated him with respect. The physical labor was exhausting, but therapeutic. Ryan worked 10-hour days, coming home sore and tired, but feeling like he had accomplished something tangible. His coworkers gradually accepted him, though some remained wary. Ryan did not push for friendship. He simply showed up every day, worked hard, and proved through actions that he was trying to change. Jennifer agreed to marriage counseling after 3 months. The sessions were difficult, with both of them expressing hurt and anger that had been building for years. Jennifer revealed that Ryan's behavior at the palace was shocking, but not entirely surprising. He had been becoming more aggressive and distant for over a year. She had tried to talk to him about it, but he'd always dismissed her concerns, saying she did not understand the pressures of his job. Ryan listened and realized she was right. He had shut her out, treating her attempts to help as attacks on his competence. He had prioritized his ego over his marriage. The therapist helped them work through communication patterns and rebuild trust slowly. It was not a quick fix. Some days, Jennifer seemed ready to give up entirely, but she kept coming back to the sessions, which Ryan took as a hopeful sign. 6 months after his release, Ryan received a letter forwarded through O'Brien. It was from guard Thompson. The letter was brief, but significant. Thompson wrote that he had been following Ryan's progress through mutual legal contacts. He had heard about the therapy, the support groups, the construction work. Thompson said he was glad Ryan was making genuine efforts to change. Thompson also shared that he had been promoted and was now training new guards. He used Ryan's case as a teaching example about maintaining composure under provocation. But he also used it to discuss how even good people could lose their way, and how important it was to practice self-control every day, not just when wearing the uniform. Thompson said he hoped Ryan's story would ultimately help others avoid similar mistakes. The letter ended with something unexpected. Thompson wrote that he forgave Ryan, not because what Ryan did was acceptable, but because holding onto anger was not serving any purpose. Thompson said he hoped Ryan could eventually forgive himself and build a life focused on helping rather than hurting. The words were simple, but profound. Ryan cried reading that letter, the first tears he had shed in months. Thompson's forgiveness did not erase his guilt or undo the consequences, but it lifted a weight Ryan had not realized he was carrying. Someone he had wronged, someone who had every right to hate him, had chosen grace instead. It was a gift Ryan did not deserve, but desperately needed. A year after the incident, Ryan's life looked completely different. He was still working construction, having been promoted to crew supervisor. His relationship with Jennifer had slowly improved. They were not back to where they were. Might never be, but they were building something new based on honesty and mutual respect. Emma and Lucas had adjusted, though Ryan knew his actions had left scars that would take years to fully heal. Ryan started volunteering with at-risk youth, sharing his story as a cautionary tale. He visited schools and community centers, talking to young people about anger management, the dangers of letting ego control your actions, and the importance of getting help before you hit rock bottom. Some kids listened, others did not, but Ryan kept going back. If his mistakes could help even one person make better choices, it was worth the discomfort of reliving his shame. He also began advocating for better mental health support for law enforcement officers. He wrote articles, gave interviews, and spoke at police conferences about the dangers of burnout and unchecked aggression. Some in the law enforcement community rejected him, viewing him as a disgrace who did not deserve a platform. But others listened, recognizing themselves in his story and seeking help before they reached their own breaking point. 2 years after the assault, Ryan received an invitation that shocked him. A police wellness organization wanted him to speak at their annual conference in Chicago. The topic was recognizing and addressing toxic behavior patterns in law enforcement before they led to tragedy. Ryan accepted, nervous, but committed to using his experience to help others. The speech was difficult to deliver. Standing before hundreds of active duty officers, many of whom looked at him with suspicion or contempt, Ryan laid out his entire story. He did not sugarcoat anything or ask for sympathy. He simply told the truth about how he had let success corrupt his character, how stress had become an excuse rather than a problem to solve, and how his moment of violence had destroyed nearly everything he cared about. He talked about Guard Thompson's professionalism and grace, about Jennifer's patience despite having every reason to leave, about Dr. Chen's guidance, about Frank giving him a chance when no one else would. He emphasized that change was possible but required genuine effort and humility. He ended by saying that the uniform, whether police or military, was supposed to represent service and protection. The moment you used it as a shield for bad behavior, you dishonored everything it stood for. The response was mixed. Some officers approached him afterward to share their own struggles. Others walked away, unwilling to listen to someone they viewed as a failure. But enough people engaged meaningfully that Ryan felt the speech had value. He was not expecting redemption or forgiveness from the law enforcement community. He was simply hoping to prevent others from walking his path. Ryan Matthews would never be a police officer again. That chapter was closed permanently, but he was slowly becoming something else. Not someone defined by his worst moment, but someone shaped by how he responded to it. The journey was long and painful, with no guarantee of a happy ending. But for the first time in years, Ryan felt like he was moving in the right direction. Not back to who he was, but forward to who he could become. And that he was learning was enough.